Hi, folks. Welcome back to Monks and Punks. We have a very special guest today. It's Dr. Sophie Gonick, who's close, near and dear to my heart, my close companion, my wife, my compadre, my partner. And we are going to be discussing something that's near and dear to her heart, which is immigrant rights and human rights and sanctuary. Dr. Gonick, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Yes. Well, this is a very special event because we are producing a event on the 28th of September at our Quaker meeting. That's Sunday, 1 p.m. It's a free event, and now we've decided that you will host it. So why don't you give us the quick rundown on who's going to be there and why you're excited?
Professor Linda Rabben from the University of Maryland will be there. She's an anthropologist who's worked extensively on questions of sanctuary and also Quaker history and has written about Quaker traditions of sanctuary and of protecting immigrants, which I think is, key for our audience because it puts kind of our current plan of action and activism into a historical and also kind of theological context. We will also have Nuala O'Doherty-Naranjo, who I've been working with for over a year. She's the former prosecutor from Queens who founded the Jackson Heights Immigrant Center out of her basement. That initiative grew out of previous COVID era activism. But once the COVID was kind of on the way out and New York City saw a huge influx of migrants starting in around 2021, she pivoted to working on issues of asylum and, immigration paperwork. And finally, we will have
Ravi Ragbir.
Yes, Ravi Ragbir, who is one of the founders of the New Sanctuary Coalition. He was himself an immigrant who'd been in deportation proceedings because of a long ago minor crime that he'd committed until he was pardoned by Biden at the end of his term. And so Ravi's going to talk to us about the work that New Sanctuary Coalition does, which is now also operating outside of Quaker spaces in New York City.
Great. Yeah, that's pretty historical that a friend, a Quaker activist, was pardoned by President Joe Biden for his I think, a recognition of the work that he's been doing for others.
Yeah, I will say, I'm not sure Ravi is a Quaker.
He's Quaker adjacent. Yeah, let's be, I guess I'm being kind of loose with the term, but I know him from Brooklyn meeting. I know that when we did Quaker Walk, and a lot of Quakers walked from Flushing, Queens to DC, that he was also speaking there on the first night at the Brooklyn meeting. And I know he regularly does sanctuary meetings because on our refrigerator, there's a flyer for his regular sanctuary meeting, the Skimmerhorn Brooklyn Meeting House. So
they do regular kind of trainings around Know Your Rights, but also around accompaniments. A lot of their work is about accompanying and witnessing the processes in immigration court. And as you say, they meet Tuesdays at the Brooklyn Meeting House in the evenings, but they will also be starting to work out of the 15th Street Meeting House in Manhattan.
I didn't know that. That's great. Yeah. So our own meeting house in Manhattan is going to also start doing live activation.
Yeah, which is part of the context of the event because and one of the things that I'm excited about is when I've talked about kind of some of my work in regards to immigration and activism, because I've been volunteering with Nuala's organization, the Jackson Heights Immigrant Center, for over a year on and off. A lot of regular attenders are curious about how they can get involved, what kind of organizations they can assist or join to help out, because as I mentioned, we've seen. Not only the current political climate is one in which immigrants are living in a lot of fear, even, documented immigrants with all of their paperwork in order because of the ways in which the federal government, or should I say regime, is going after immigrants. So seems to be their kind of policy priority number one. But that is also occurring here in New York against a backdrop in which we've seen the addition of over 200,000 new immigrants coming to the city since just in the last 4 years. And so there have been a number of different challenges. There have been also a number of different local grassroots initiatives I should say, grassroots initiatives both against these new arrivals, but also to help new arrivals, help them adapt to New York, help them, kind of follow the legal procedures that they need to follow in order to, apply for asylum, etc. And so there's just been so much going on within this space over the last several years, and now we're at this kind of crisis moment.
Great. Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough. I probably should have led off with a lot of hype or a lot of emotion, but since it's early on a Sunday morning and we're just trying to do a friendly interview, let's just take it as given that we both feel really passionate about the importance of this historical moment. I think you'll agree that there's really never been such a draconian response from the federal government. Now, you could say, well, Teddy Roosevelt did the Anti-Chinese Exclusion Act, and there's been a nasty tradition in American history with the Know Nothing Party and nativism, there's been a kind of a historical pattern of anti-immigrant sentiment historically. What's your comment on that?
So listen, every American president has had, deportation was not invented under Trump. Deportation was at very high numbers under Obama. I think lower numbers under Biden. And various different administrations have had kind of more or less friendly immigration policy. But just because we are a country of immigrants does not mean that our history of immigration and immigration policymaking has been so friendly to those who are seeking refuge here. And of course, they've been particularly punitive towards non-white immigrants from poorer countries, including a lot of this influx that we've seen in New York is from parts of Latin America, though there's also been Africans, Chinese, etc. But we've never seen the kind of ramping up of an organization like ICE to such an extent that we have it now, right? It's one thing to try to keep people out. It's another thing to forcibly expel and round up people, often for, with or without pretense. We've seen stories of American citizens being swept up. We've seen stories of, we know the case of Mahmoud Khalil, who is, a green card holder, that those kind of traditional protections aren't, offering, or the government is quite simply not observing and respecting the kind of protections that are in place. And they're also removing protections that are in place, including temporary protected status, which a huge number of people from a number of different countries, Haiti, Nicaragua, Honduras, etc., have this status. And so, basically, and even while that is kind of baked in a certain degree of ambiguity, removing it altogether has put people who've been here for decades into a kind of legal jeopardy, such that they're, contemplating where to go next.
Yeah, as a quick tangent on Mahmoud Khalil, I don't know if you knew this, but by listening to the Ezra Klein podcast, the New York Times podcaster, he did a groundbreaking interview with Khalil and let Khalil say some very interesting pro-Palestine things on his podcast. And in response, the New York Post, the very next day after the broadcast, published a front page story that said, "Deport him now," against Ezra Klein and against the podcast. I mean, I didn't see it because I don't regularly see the Post at newsstands, but and Mahmoud Khalil has an American wife and he has a green card and he has a kid that was born here. And for the New York Post, to be calling for his deportation is a pretty ugly moment. And I wanted to pivot to your own work. I know that your last book was called Dispossession and Dissent, and you covered Ecuadorian immigrants in Spain, looking at housing issues there. But now you're doing some research and field work in Jackson Heights with immigrants in our fair city. So tell us more about your current work.
Yeah, so first, the reality of getting married and having job requires my presence in New York. It seems to kind of mitigate against doing research in Spain, and so I thought I'd study something much closer at hand. But I was also, of course, observing the realities of a massive immigration influx. And what really kind of, sparked this current project that I'm working on is the question of, these kind of intersecting crises. On the one hand, we have this huge influx of new arrivals, low income immigrants struggling to find work, but they're also struggling to find housing. And they're coming to New York in a time in which we're at, absolute kind of historic, affordability crisis in terms of the fact that New York City is increasingly unaffordable for just even middle class people. And a lot of what's driving that unaffordability is housing. That housing is incredibly expensive. It's hard to find. It's, often insecure, particularly if you're low income. And so I started this project as kind of trying to figure out how new arrivals were finding housing outside of the shelter system, because the shelter system only guarantees you usually 30 days if you're a single adult. And so that meant that there was this huge number of people who were also trying to then find housing in a very hostile housing market. And so I've interviewed 22 immigrants, almost all of them new arrivals, mostly from Ecuador, a few from other areas of South America and Latin America. And, what they're finding is a lot of kind of substandard basement apartments that charge a huge amount of money for, basically an illegal room. And, new work is then going to, what I'm really trying to understand, I think, going forward, is this kind of immigrant real estate market, both the kind of how people everyday low income immigrants navigate kind of substandard housing markets, but also how those substandard housing markets are produced through previous rounds of immigration and investment in the built environment. Because, in fact, a lot of the landlords who are renting out these basement apartments are themselves immigrants. And so I'm interested in kind of tracing this history and its kind of social realities with an eye towards kind of, the role of real estate and property markets in immigrant everyday urban life.
Great. So our event, once again, is on the 28th of September. It's in about 4 weeks, and it is free, and it's at 1 p.m. It's at 15 Rutherford Place in Manhattan. There is actually a complimentary light lunch served at 12:30, so people can come for lunch. I hope that people can network, meet other activists, get creative ideas for creative nonviolent resistance to the insanity and racism in the world. And what are your hopes for activism coming out of this event?
Well, I hope it both kind of puts current events and current effort, like pro-immigrant efforts, within a kind of historical context, because I do think it's part of a particular Quaker lineage, but I'm also hoping that it offers those who are really interested in getting involved different avenues for activism and action. I also think it's just informative. I think we need to know what is going on, and in order to like best prepare ourselves to go out in the world, that knowledge is offers a particular kind of power. And well, I mean, you mentioned the New York Post's reaction to Mahmoud Khalil's interview, and I think it's also important for us to think about messaging. How do we talk to others? There is, while polls have shown that a majority of people are opposed to what's going on, are opposed to the kind of rounding up of immigrants that ICE is pursuing, there is still a very significant number of people who are all in, who are cheering it on, who are taking, photos with the sign in Florida that points towards alligator Alcatraz. And that, again, knowledge is power, and also being able to learn how to kind of message on these issues, I think is one way that we can help to combat a lot of this anti-immigrant sentiment.
Knowledge is power. Beautiful, beautiful. And as you know, in Quaker meeting, we believe in the inner light that's in every person. So that idea of knowledge is power is similar to this idea of a kind of a democracy of theology, of light being in everyone, including every human being, whether they were born inside of an imaginary border or not.
The next site of National Guards and
Yes, get your papers ready.
I mean, the only two things that I want to add is, people have been migrating since the beginning of time.
Right.
Migration, that migration is not going to stop, and migration is particularly not going to stop because of the way capitalism, addicted to fossil fuels, is also making parts of the world uninhabitable. And so we also need to think about the fact that even if you loathe migration, in particular if you loathe migration, something like, anti-global warming policy or an anti-immigration policy, right?
Yeah.
Because it helps to keep people where they are at. And so to think about the various overlapping, honestly, crises in which we are living, and that, each of these exacerbates one another, that they are not independent from one another.
Absolutely. We're wrapping up the second hottest summer on record right now. That's the moment we're in right now. Second hottest summer ever right now. There's a drought in agricultural zones. Just listening to Bureau of Labor Statistics show on WNYC recently talking about drought and heat, and second hottest summer ever is the summer we just had. So think of, I like how you're talking about intersectionality with different issues. That's really great. So one final plug, September 28th is our event. It's free. It's in Manhattan. It's on Sunday. And if you want to try out Quaker Meeting, 11 a.m. is the Quaker Meeting for Worship, a decentralized, non-hierarchical, no clergy religious service in which we sit in silence and we meditate. And then if people feel called by a inner voice or an outer spirit of truth, people give vocal ministry, and it's a beautiful experience. And you and I are getting more and more involved in there, and that's where we were married by the grace of the higher power. So anyway, that's 928 15 Rutherford Place. The event is at 1 p.m. And for anyone who cares about humanitarian values and human rights and standing up to the draconian deportations, please come. Any final words?
I'm not off the top of my head.
Well, great. Thank you so much for being on the Monks and Punks podcast. I love you, and I'll see you later.
You're very cute. Yeah.
Bye. Hey folks, just a quick message. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe. Why? Because we've got content nobody else has. I'm Sander Hicks. I'm an activist, spiritual, political, Quaker, Zen, into nonviolence, into creative construction and carpentry, into investigative journalism, reporting, and winning elections for the progressive Democratic left. So please like and please subscribe. Peace.